feel like I have not done this in a while. What is up, guys? It's Cam Browne, another Cam Browne film, another Cam Browne video. As you can see over here, this is the new purchase, but we're not talking about that today. Today, we're gonna be talking about cinematic photo editing, and I'm gonna show you guys my secrets and my techniques that I've been using for the past 3 months, kind of pulled from some of my favorite creatives and kind of made my own system. And the reason I'm making this is because when I was first starting out and I absolutely knew nothing about photo editing and I sucked and I couldn't figure out the secrets, or most importantly, what to look for and what not to look for when editing photos, this is the type of video that I would have loved, that would have helped me tremendously. And that's what this channel is about, is helping the DIY filmmaker or the DIY photographer. With that being said, let's get back to the computer and edit some photos. Okay, so we're in Adobe Lightroom right now, and I have picked out 4 photos that I've shot in the past that are a little bit more cinematic. I have 2 daytime photos and 2 nighttime photos. I tend to think that nighttime photos lend themselves to be a little bit easier to get the look, but I wanted to show the process for all of the photos that I've shot. So let's just start with this one. And one part of my process that I'm really excited to show you guys is I do have some presets here, but I tend not to be super preset heavy. And I also don't use presets in a traditional way where I just put it on the image and then it's done. I actually just use a preset basically just to add some more contrast and get the colors a little tweaked to how I like them. So right over here are the presets that I start out with. They're actually VSCO presets, and they're Portra 160 +1. There's 2 variations. I just kind of see which one I like best. Usually I'm looking for some blue in the shadows. Apply that, it looks terrible. So first step in my process is to go over to dehaze and crank it way up. And I'm sure you guys are thinking, what the hell is Cam doing at this point? But let's break it down a little bit. I want to edit this photo to be more cinematic. And so we should treat it the way we edit our video footage to be cinematic, which is you start with a very flat, desaturated image, and then you build up. Versus the typical technique when you edit photos where you kind of start with a very saturated, contrasty image, and then you try to take some of that away and tweak colors that way. I find this is way more effective and efficient when you're trying to get that cinematic photo, and it almost looks like you shot it on a video camera, just super high quality for the Instagram feed. So let's take it from here. So I don't have a specific number I'm trying to get to. I find, depending on the camera, somewhere around 70 to 60 works on my Fuji X-T4. 55 looks good. I'm not trying to go too far. I find if you take this dehazing too far, you lose a lot of details. So I just try to get it flat and desaturated and work from there. All right, so next thing I do is I bring the exposure and I bring it way down. And then to adjust this, or to balance it out, I'll bump these highlights up. Now trust me guys, this looks terrible, but it's gonna come together very quickly. And so now it's get the highlights to where you want them, don't pay attention to the other values. And then let's bring the shadows down. So if you look at the shadow in the arm right here, do you see how it's kind of flat and you lose some detail? That's actually kind of what we're looking for. So if you bring them up, you see a lot of detail, and it actually is grainy from the dehaze. So if you bring it down, you get that faded film look. And then right here, I'll just bring the blacks down a little bit. And at this point, this image is still missing some pop. So that's where these whites come in. And let's add some saturation. I don't have a true value that I always stick to here. Maybe 45 looks okay. And now this image is getting closer to where I want, but I need to balance out the skin tones and the white balance. So right now this image is looking very cool to me, and it's very magenta. You can see in his skin, it looks just pink and not too natural. So let's start off by just warming this image up a little bit. I'm really paying attention to its skin tones here, making sure that these whites are more white than they are blue. And then I would take away personally some of that magenta. Now his skin is looking a little bit better. And now that I can see that these whites need to come up even more just to help with that skin tone. Maybe even some highlights. Now currently how this photo sits, it's just kind of a basic edit. There's nothing special about it. So what we're gonna do to add a little bit of pop and to look like it was actually shot on film is to play with the split toning. Typically with split toning, what I will do is add blues to the highlights, a little bit too much to where it starts to look bad, and then I balance that out with the white balance, and that is the key on how you get a true cinematic image. So let's do that. The white balance is pretty good how it is, and secret tip, I go to 205 and saturation about 25 to 30, maybe a little bit more saturated on darker photos and maybe a little bit less on lighter photos. It's really up to what you think looks best. So now with the blues added to the highlights, this photo is way too cool, as you can see. And what I will do is balance that out with the temperature, and it's actually looking a little green. So we're gonna bring that back up to the magenta and warm it up a little bit. I'm liking how this is looking. I might brighten it up a little bit there and add a little bit of contrast. This is where you kind of just do the tweaks to the image that isn't standardized. And what I will do is for Instagram, I'll do a 4:5 crop, but since I want to do a very cinematic image, I will do a 6:9 crop, just to make it look like it was actually shot on a video camera. And so this is our second image. It is still of Riley, same car, same shoot, but now the sun is set and it is dark, and we are lighting him up with a nice red light to get some contrast. We got some glow in the ceiling, off the window, and a little bokeh ball in the background. So I lit him up red, but we're actually gonna take a lot of that away. One thing that I do sometimes in photos is I'll use a colored light, and then I will balance that back out into a proper skin tone. And what that does is it turns all these other colors that aren't this red in the photo a different color, and it'll add some nice color contrast to the image, making things super cinematic. So let's brighten this up a little bit first so we can see everything that's going on. Right away you can see that there's a car here I didn't even know, and that's actually what's causing this bokeh ball that I actually had no idea was here. So let's add our Portra. I'm liking Portra 161 Plus. It looks terrible right now, but once we go ahead and add that dehaze, I'm gonna go a little bit extra on this guy just because it is a little bit darker. There is a little bit more contrast in the photo naturally. I'll go like 66, looks okay to me. And now I will darken this image back up to where the shadows, right now I'm looking for the shadows to see how much I want to darken this image up. Looking right here, and I want to go just to the point where some of that detail is lost. Let's bring these highlights up. I'm looking at his shirt right here. Now an example of too bright would be like this. This just, you lose all the balance in the photo. I still want it to be bright, but not draw too much attention away from everything else. So that looks okay to me. Let's crush these shadows down. And again, like the first photo, we're looking for these shadows to where you start to get that faded effect in the shadows and you lose some detail and you add a little bit of punch. So that looks good to me. Same thing with blacks. That's looking good. Let's keep it plus 12 and add, do I want to add some whites? A little bit. Okay, so levels wise, this image looks good to me. I might put a little bit more haze in it just to get a little bit more of that faded look from the film. But this is still far too red. It looks unnatural. It looks like I'm lighting this up rather than creating a ambiance and an atmosphere that this character is in. Something that I try to do in my cinematic photos is I tell my models that they're not a model anymore. They're in a short film and this is a scene. And rather than looking good, I want them to convey an emotion. So just like in the first photo, the way I get rid of a lot of this red and to balance the image out is to add some split toning. So let's go over in the highlights, 205. Probably gonna have to go pretty aggressive with this. Let's see. I'll go 45. That looks pretty good. And so that balanced a little bit out in the skin. You can see here it's starting to turn effect in his skin. It's starting to get a little bit duller. That's kind of what we're looking for. And then we just play. My first instinct, warm looks pretty good. You can either go cool or warm, and you can go pretty extreme in the tint in these darker photos, especially when you're going for that cinematic. One white balance combo that I really like on these darker lit up contrasty photos is to go pretty aggressive on the warmth and pretty aggressive on the green tint. And I think right here's looking good. And now it's all about kind of going back in here and playing with it to see what looks nice. See, typically I would add saturation in the photos like I did for the first one, but here, since this red light is so colorful and bright, I actually don't need to add any saturation. For me, this is looking pretty nice. Now to finish things off, 16:9 crop. Rule of thirds, try to get his eye just below that. See if there's anything in the corners that we want to get rid of. I do not think so. And yeah, this photo is looking nice. I would have no problem adding this photo to the IG feed. In fact, I did last week and it got a lot of love. Proof that this editing technique works. All right, so that was super in depth on those first two photos. Now let's just go into the last two, a daylight photo and a nighttime photo. With that, I will leave you to watch the edit, enjoy the music, chill, grab a drink, grab a coffee, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.